To those who have been excluded by Christians, to those who have gone to church their whole life, and to those who are exploring, welcome. We hope that Oak Life Church can be a home for you. If you have been rejected by the church as a person of color, as a woman, as an LGBT person, as a non-Christian, or for any other reason, we're sorry for the way you were treated. We believe that God loves you, and we would be honored by your presence. We'll tell you a little about ourselves, and we hope we can journey together. We hope to love people the way Jesus does. We don't want to judge. We want marginalized people to be welcome here, and we are still improving as an inclusive place. We long for peace and justice on earth. We build this through community service, generosity, and activism. We value community, and we value building supportive relationships with each other. We love creativity, and we love the way God speaks to us through art. We don't claim to know the truth fully, but we seek to follow Jesus, and we seek to grow together. If these are things you connect to, come visit us. We hope you will share with us who you are and help shape our community. With much love, Oak Life Church.
Good morning, Oak Life. I would like us to open up in prayer through song. So this song we're going to sing, let it be an opportunity for us to kind of warm up the spirit, get in the moment, and be connected to the spirit that connects us all. Be thou my vision, O Lord of my heart, not be all else to me, save that thou art, thou my best thought by day or by night, waking or sleeping, thy presence, thy light. Riches I need not, nor man's empty praise, thou mine inheritance, thou and always, thou and thou always, first in my heart, my King of heaven, my treasure thou art. Oh God, be my everything, be my delight, be Jesus my glory, my soul satisfied. Oh God, be my everything, be my delight, be Jesus my glory, my soul satisfied. My King of heaven, my victory won, make Reach heaven's joys, oh bright heaven's sun. Heart of my own heart, whatever befall, still be my vision, oh ruler of all. Still be my vision, oh ruler of all. Oh God, be our everything, be our delight, be Jesus our glory, our soul satisfied. Oh God, be our everything, be our delight. Be Jesus our glory, our soul satisfied. Amen. Oak Life, welcome. If you are new here, newer, first time, back from a long time, thank you for rocking with us. I appreciate spending this moment with you all. In person, online community was popping. Love to see your comments and all your engagement. And as a reminder, Oak Life is just a community of everyday people learning to live, love, fight, and follow as Jesus did and does. And with this next song, I hope that you follow suit because I enjoy singing it, and I hope you enjoy singing along. I'm gonna bring it back. There it is. Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. We couldn't earn it, we don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves 99. You couldn't earn it, we don't deserve it, till you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Sing it out. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yeah. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. No. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Yeah. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it's chasing me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. We couldn't earn it, we don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. And all God's people said, amen. Feel free to be seated.
All right. Hello. Hi, Oak Life. Since I'm already up here, I thought I would lead you in announcements. All right, here we go. So when we're talking about our announcements, we first have to kick it off with wear your mask, everybody. Okay, even at home, wear it. I don't know. Feel good about yourself. And we are also talking about support. So if you need support, we're here to help. If you have the ability to give support, we'd love to receive it. So a little bit of both. If you have some time, go to oaklife.com/generosity and also oaklife.com/support. Nope, it's mental health. It's not support. /mental health. Okay. We also had some really great hangs. The most recent one was on February 10th, and it was so fun. I saw the pictures. I wasn't there, but I'm going to try to make the next one on February 27th. So if you're able to make it, it's going to be right after church at the little, pavilion area right near Red Bay Coffee. So literally 1 block that way. Next slide. Okay, great. So we're also having a Black Liberation walking tour. That is going to be February 26th. It's on a Saturday Sunday. Okay. Don't try to trip me up, Greg. Okay. February 26th, 1 to 3 o'clock. Oak Life is paying for the walking tour. If you'd like to have lunch afterwards, it's going to be $20. But you get to talk with the walking tour guide and ask questions and hear a little bit more. So please sign up and join. You can sign up online. Okay, there's also going to be a Black Joy Parade. That is going to be on Sunday, February 27th, 14th and Broadway, 12:30. So right after church, you need to get your steps in. Let's go to the parade, right? Okay, so I hope to see you there. I'll be there. Let's go. And we're also going to have a reflection from our spiritual director. We had a spiritual director last year. That was Gina Norman. And she's going to be leading a reflection that's in a live, I don't know how to say that word. And it's going to be online at 11 o'clock on Saturday, March 5th. So if you would like to RSVP, you can RSVP at the number below. We always need volunteers. So if you would like to sing, if you would like to do percussion, if you would like to come up here and do announcements, if you would like to greet at the front door, if you would like to do AV online or in person, if you would also just like to help set up and tear down and not have to see people, we're here for it. So come on, come volunteer, come on. You know you want to. And you can do what I do. Power move. Okay. Anybody in the community have any announcements? Anything you'd like to share with us? Oh, yes, Adam. Hey, boo.
Hi, my name's Adam. So we host a game night. We host a game night on Wednesday nights, every other Wednesday night. So if you're interested, we'll post more details on the Facebook page. But it's super funny. Y'all should come. And I make cupcakes and food and stuff. So you should come.
Okay, for those that are online, Adam is hosting a game night every other Wednesday at his house, which is right near the church. And so if you would like to participate, it's like going to be super, super fun. And there's going to be cupcakes and food and whatever and games. So come on and join. Anyone else? No? Okay, if there's any online announcements, please pop them on the screen. If not, then I'm going to invite our fabulous finance team. Give them a round of applause, everybody. All right. You can also use this mic.
Good morning. My name is Mitzi, and I am the quote-unquote CFO of Oak Life. Yeah. And this is Beth. She is also on our finance team. We have another member, Rachel, who's just wasn't able to be here, but we also love her. And we just wanted to give you guys a little update on Oak Life finances.
Mm-hmm. Either way. Yeah. Thanks, Mitzi. I'm Beth. I've been part of the finance team since last summer. And apologies if you already heard this information or saw these slides at our last discernment meeting, but we think it's super important to be transparent and share the information as broadly as possible with the church. So with that, let's take a look. So this is a snapshot of how the church did financially for the last full fiscal year, which was from July 1st of 2020 through June 30th of 2021. And you can see here we did pretty well. You can see our income on the left side of the screen here that shows just online giving and donations to various funds that we had. I think the big question mark that I had was like, whoa, the benevolence fund looks a lot smaller here than what we reported out to the church. But that's just because I would say the majority of that giving happened in spring of 2020, and this is only capturing donations after July 1st of 2020. So that's why that looks that way. And then if you look over to our expenses, I think the most notable thing over there is you can see the rent was super duper low because we were all at home for that entire year. And yes, otherwise self-explanatory. And you can see we had a surplus at the end of the year, a small surplus. So that was good to have a little bit of a cushion in the bank. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So we will see our projected budget. The leadership team voted to approve this. And this is based on just information we have and current trends. So if you look at the expenses, you can see the rent. We are seeing a huge increase for this year because we're back here in person. So that's actually really good. And then this is the income, the generosity is based on trends that we've seen with online giving and whatnot. And so you can see we are anticipating a small deficit at the end of the year. And of course, this is just a projection, so it could always change before June 30th, the end of the fiscal year. But if things continue on as they've been, this is likely where we will be. But the leadership team still voted to approve this budget, even with this deficit, since we had a cushion in place from the previous fiscal year. So so that's pretty much where we stand, and I will pass it over to Mitzi.
Thank you. So we can go to the next slide. So speaking of generosity trends, what has actually happened is what you see here. So on this left side here, your left, you can see our generosity giving didn't really change from our 2019, 2020 to 2020, 2021. But which was great. But then we did see starting the current fiscal year that we are in, that things have been dropping a little bit. We are let me see here. Yeah, we've seen about a drop of like what would be on trend for be about $20,000 for the full year, which is about $2,100 a month. And as Beth mentioned, we were already budgeting at a deficit. But as you also saw, because we had a surplus from the year prior, we do have a little bit of cushion, so we're able to ride this wave, but it's just not something that we can ride for the long term. And then on the left here, or sorry, on the right here, you'll see even as our generosity like coming in, we have still been able to give outward. And so this is our third Sunday giving trends, which in the 2020-21 fiscal year, sorry, that's always a lot to say. The leadership team actually voted to make our third Sunday generosity a line item in our budget versus giving what was like physically given on our third Sunday morning, which is why you see these like huge increases. And again, if you can't see it, the actual numbers are in the yellow, whereas the green is what's projected for the full year. Let me go to the next one. So it's just another look at the trends from month to month. 2020 is in yellow, 2021, and this is for the calendar year, not the fiscal year. So you can see that the dropping kind of started in about March of last year, where we saw different from year over year. And that big jump in April from 2020 was the first month that we had our our benevolence fund. And so that's why we had a huge spike in giving there, which was great. Just a couple of things I wanted to point out that you don't necessarily see here is that we have 51 like monthly active givers currently that are recurring. We know that that money is coming in each month because they've like scheduled it out, which is helpful. And that we have about 55 unique givers total from month to month on average currently. And I think the other interesting fact we have here is about 50% of our online giving is from 7 individuals or families. And we have, I think, like on average, like 120 views of our Sunday services, including our friends and family that are here now. So I think that's it. And we go to the next slide. So speaking of the benevolence fund, you'll see the yellow is where money has come in. And so a lot of the grants given actually came in the last couple of years. We had a total of, let me see here, 22,385 in donations since the beginning of the fund. And we are able to grant $17,041 to people. This was for rent, utilities, food, medical, transportation needs, all of the above. So we currently have a balance of $5,345. So I think that's mostly what we wanted to cover. This information is available on our website in our annual report. And also, as Beth mentioned, we did this again. There's a video on our YouTube page somewhere. But if you have any other questions, please email the finance team. It's finance-team@oaklifechurch.com. And Chris and Greg, y'all want to come talk?
This is my mic. I'm gonna use my mic. Yo, thank you again, finance team, Mitzi and Beth. They're like bosses. They're so cool. They're such good people. I'm not saying that just because you're here. I would say that behind your back. I would totally say that behind your back. Well, we just wanted to say just thank you for you all being the source and opportunity for this community to be what it is. Maybe not exactly the source, but the embodiment of the source. See what I did there? The body. You got anything to say?
This is two pastors awkwardly talking about money.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
No, but to second that, just thank you all for contributing to Oak Life. I know that there are many ways to practice generosity, and one of those is financial. And so thank you, all of you who helped make Oak Life what it is. I'll just say that very much so, this community is beautiful, sacred, and a matter of, I've said this a couple weeks ago, of life and death. There are folks in our community who have found healing and home, connection to others, connection to God, and even post-pandemic, not post, this new iteration of the pandemic, when we started meeting in person, I could think of multiple people who were so isolated. We all needed it, but the chance to actually be together, as awkwardly as it is with masks, and we're still learning this, had like a psychological major uptick for many of us, that we were so alone that we needed to be together, and to be together centered on love and God is something I think our world desperately needs. So just thank you for continuing to practice generosity in this space. And we are who we are because of you all. And that's pretty much what we wanted to say. And if you are like new-ish and you want to think about what it means to cultivate and help be a part of this community, talk to us. I think that's it.
Yeah. The last little update for the new people who may not know what like leadership team and finance team. We have a couple of teams that make Oak Life what it is behind the scene, and it's a group of 12 of us, I think. All volunteers, all helping think through the process so that the decisions of Oak Life are a reflection of the community and not just from two people. So if you're interested in joining the LT, holler at me. If there's another way to support, I think we have another slide, last slide up before we move on. You can support us if finance is one way you want to do that. You can do that this way. If there's other ways, we can have conversations. But that's it. I think we got couch conversations up next, yeah?
Yep.
All right, next slide. Boom. Get close to some friends, have some conversation. Usually, if you're familiar, we chat for about 5 or so minutes. We got a lot of content, so we got about a minute and a half, 2 minutes of conversation. So jump right into the good stuff. Peace.
Sweet.
Oh yeah, I'm ready. No, you don't have to. Sorry.
Just behind community. So like right here. All right, we're going to start wrapping up. We give about 15, 20 seconds to finish your thought. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching us online, however you are joining us. Special welcome to anybody who's new. And I'm excited for today's convo. It's going to be really, really fun. A couple remarks before we get going. You remember when we couldn't do this? It wasn't that long ago. And I was thinking about that. I felt very emotional at the hangout on Thursday, walking up and knowing I'm going to be around some friends. There's a time even hanging out outdoors was something that a lot of us were really avoidant of, and rightfully so. But what a gift it is to be together and to be in community. Huge props to our finance team and the various folks who help make Oak Life what it is. Thank you. Yeah. So if you've been hanging out with us, you know we've been in a conversation called Rooted, which has been a chance to look at the values of Oak Life, these words that kind of meant something to us as we were forming, that kind of anchor and capture a piece of how we feel like we're supposed to express faith in community. And I think I have all the values up there, and we've gone over a chunk of them. We have a couple more left after today. And it feels like as we're starting this new chapter of Oak Life, and there's a lot of new people, there's kind of a new season, different terrain. We thought it'd be good to review all these and consider them what they mean now. And so we've done deep community, peace and justice, compassion. Last week was contextualization. We did creativity. This week we're going to do intellectual engagement. Next week, creation care, and the week after that, we're going to close with diversity. But this week, as we enter the conversation with intellectual engagement, we're going to have a conversation. Think of this more of like hanging out with some people over coffee, talking about a subject. And so in a minute, I'm going to introduce somebody we're going to kind of interview and talk with. But I thought I'd kind of set the tone by inviting us to consider what intellectual engagement means for people of faith. The surveys are all over the place that American Christians are not known for being intellectually engaged. In fact, one of the perceptions is that we are closed-minded or ideologically rigid, and sometimes even anti-science, right? Many times anti-science. That's a huge debate in American history, even with the Darwin versus creationism story. This is a part of our zeitgeist here in this country. And we've seen it come to a head in the last few years, certainly with how Christians perceive the vaccine, how we do politics. And many of us are known, have experienced that even in our own upbringing. We have questions and doubts about faith. Certain things don't make sense, but that conversation has often been silenced. And so as we were formed by a bunch of skeptics, in a sense. Like, we are deeply drawn to Christ. We have this connection to God. We want to be about bringing justice and goodness in the world, but we don't want to do that at the cost of being intellectually engaged. And so that was kind of the tension that a lot of people in the beginning held as we were forming Oak Life. And that's a tension that we want to open up and invite us all to consider today. So I want to read a passage of scripture that kind of captures the inclusion of doubt and questions into our faith story. And just take a moment to let this breathe as kind of an anchor passage. This is Mark 9:14 through 24. When they came to the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and the teachers of the law arguing with them. As soon as all the people saw Jesus, they were overwhelmed with wonder and ran to greet him. "What are you arguing with him about?" he asked. A man in the crowd answered, "Teacher, I brought you my son who is possessed by a spirit that has robbed him of speech. Whenever it seizes him, it throws him to the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive out the spirit, but they could not." "You unbelieving generation," Jesus replied, "how long shall I stay with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring the boy to me." So they brought him. When the spirit saw Jesus, it immediately threw the boy into a convulsion. He fell to the ground and rolled around, foaming at the mouth. Jesus asked the boy's father, "How long has he been like this?" "From childhood," he answered. "It has often thrown him into the fire or water to kill him, but if you can do anything, take pity on us." "If you can," Jesus said, "everything is possible for the one who believes." Immediately the boy's father exclaimed, "I do believe. Help me overcome my unbelief." Mark 9:1 through 14, or 14 through 24. How many of us can relate to that? I believe, but I don't believe at the same moment. I want to believe, but it doesn't make sense. I don't understand. take a minute to let this passage speak, and we just want to let it breathe for a second. If there's a word or a phrase or a verse that kind of captures you or hits you today, we'd love for you to share it. And feel free to just raise your hand or shout something out. And if you're online, feel free to put it in the comments and we'll bring it up. Anything from this passage speaking to you this morning or raising a question? Yeah.
I actually don't like this passage because it's the exact embodiment of like a dogma. Like you can only do things through God, and there's like no science around why he's foaming at the mouth or anything like that. Not that they maybe would have had the science at the time, but I think the end is like, yeah, you have to have belief in, and it's not just belief in God, right? But that's what it's used as. Like you can only have belief in God. And then and through that, then everything becomes clear. But it's like God also gave us science. Yes.
Yeah. Try to capture that one for the online folks. You're perfect. That's good. Some frustration or dislike of this passage because it emphasizes too much on the belief and misses out some of the questions of maybe medical explanations. Like, can we ask that question? Is that close enough? Anybody else? You unbelieving generation speaks to me. Thanks, Larry. We're experimenting with a different projector, so the comments are a little lower than last week. Any other comments? Emotions, feelings, anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, along the same one that Larry called out, like Jesus replied, "How long shall I stay with you? How long should I put up with you? Make the boy to me." Not like my image of compassion, you know? So I just like, Jesus seems like he's in a bad mood, and I just feel like a little weird about that because that's not how I envision Jesus. But it just sounds like he's like kind of calling, like, yeah, you unbelieving generation, like he's kind of being accusatory.
Yeah. So that you, unbelieving generation, and Jesus being frustrated doesn't seem to match up with the most compassionate response. And that isn't how you often visualize Jesus being frustrated with us. So one more hand, if there was another one over here. If not, sure, right here. Go ahead. Yeah.
I have a lot of feelings about all of this. I think the last line is confusing to me, the part about believing but also not believing. But before we got to that line, I was confused because I didn't understand who was supposed to believe. Like, is it the child, is it the father, is it the other disciples who can't perform the miracle that they're supposed to? So that part was also confusing to me. But also, when I think of Jesus as very sassy. He's one of my favorite people because he's probably one of the most real people in the Bible. There's so much that he says. Like, I remember when his mom was like, had to come back for him, and his mom was like, "Where have you been? Like, your siblings are looking for you." Like, "Nah, my siblings are here." Like, he's so sassy, and I kind of love it, but it also makes me kind of sad because I feel like people never know what version of Jesus they're gonna get. Like, am I gonna get the version of Jesus who's like, "No, like, let all women come to me for like you do for the Christians, like, let the children come to me," for example. Or it's like people are literally coming to him and he's like, "What's wrong with all of you? Like, why do I have to put up with this?"
It's good. Well said. So some questions around who's there to believe, who's a person Jesus is frustrated with. Also some like, it's kind of cool that he's sassy because like you're drawn to that quality of Jesus. That's like, but also like, what does that mean? So the tension and questions of it all. Really well said. Thank you. I have time for maybe one more. Verse 24, I have it. "Given me room to feel doubt, I believe, but help me when I don't. Jesus still heals the boy, which tells me that doubt is okay." Give everyone a round of applause. There may have been a couple extra hands. Sorry we didn't have time to get to you today, but the tension that's brought up, that's good. And we may not answer it, but follow the questions. That's a healthy process. So as we're talking about this value, intellectual engagement, having questions, thinking with their mind, understanding what is God doing, all these questions, we thought it'd be fun to have a friend who has been a part of Oak Life for a little while join me in a little conversation. So I'm going to introduce Charlotte and then invite her up. You can come on up. Here's a mic for you. Get cozy. Charlotte is a dear friend of mine, has been a part of Oak Life for me 5 or 6 years, and is a book editor and comes at faith with a fresh perspective. Charlotte wasn't, hopefully I'm not sharing too much here, so wasn't born a person of faith, but came to Christianity in adulthood. And so a lot of the actual like baggage a lot of us have, Charlotte has like a different perspective on, and it's so refreshing.
Yeah, I have whole different baggage.
Yeah, right. And so I've just really deeply enjoyed Charlotte's mind and heart and the way that they have spoken into our community over the years. And so we talked a couple times about what it would be like to just have a conversation around intellectual engagement. So is that cool with you, Charlotte?
Yeah, I feel so lucky to be up here. Thank you.
I feel lucky to be up here with you. So first, what is your experience with faith and intellectual engagement?
So as you know, I have very intense experiences with that. So I was raised atheist, believing that religion was the enemy of science, the enemy of thought, and sort of dragging back human progress. And the reason I was raised this way is my parents and grandparents were atheists in Lawrence, Kansas, and which is a pretty hardcore Bible Belt. And my grandfather, Peter, was very active in the creation versus evolution debates. And there was one debate that took place when my dad was a teenager, and my dad has told me this story. And my grandfather, Peter, was scheduled to be in this public debate about creation versus evolution. And one of my dad's classmates, who was raised in church and believed that my grandfather was tempting people with Satan by teaching them science, he tried to sneak up on my grandfather before the lecture and knock him out with a baseball bat. And my dad saw this happening and tackled his classmate and wrestled the baseball bat out of his hands. And so, as from the time I was like a toddler, I was hearing religion was evil. So, it's pretty funny. I'm sitting in a church now, or in a movie theater church preaching. It's weird. It's like, who am I even now still? And I still have the values of intellectual engagement that my parents taught me, but what I realized is that religion and faith is its own whole area of exploration. And it's not opposed to science, it's asking a different set of questions. Science is mainly concerned with what and how, and religion is concerned with why and meaning. And so you can ask those questions both at once. But I had a very emotional week because of the events taking place in Ottawa. I don't know if you've been following the news stories about Ottawa, but my youngest brother lives there. And it's been occupied by some protesters who are trying to end masking and vaccine requirements in Canada. And they're holding signs that says, like, trust the immune system that God gave you. They're holding transphobic signs. They are stealing food from homeless shelters. They are just generally acting like despicable people. There are Canadian flags with content warning anti-Semitism. There are Canadian flags with swastikas painted on top of them being waved, Confederate flags, American flags being waved in Canada's capital. And all of it has been mainly funded by American Christians. And the GoFundMe took down their funding page because they were so violent. And a Christian, an explicitly Christian crowdfunding site, raised them $4 million to be in Canada's capital, honking all night so my younger brother can't sleep. So this is intense. And when I heard about it, I'm like, my ancestral enemy is back. Like the same dark force that like attacked my grandfather when he was being a science professor is now back in attacking my younger brother's home. And so I really care passionately about reclaiming my faith from this dark force. I love Jesus so much. And I think that the commandment says we should love God with all our mind and all our spirit and all our heart and all our strength. And so asking us to give up loving him with our mind, which is that's when you discourage intellectual engagement. You're saying stop loving God with your mind. You're giving up an entire quarter of your practice, and that has to stop. So yeah, a lot of intense stuff there, but I hope that answers your question, Chris.
Thank you for sharing, sincerely. Why do you think faith communities often struggle or avoid intellectual engagement? Like, so these stories of your ancestry, this tension in America, like, why do we get this one wrong so often?
Yeah, so I think that in a really big picture sense, religious authority saw scientific authority as a threat to its power. At least that's what I was taught as a little girl, that when Galileo said the earth circles the sun, like the church was embarrassed. And that might be an oversimplified narrative. But what I've noticed in the here and now, in the present, is that a lot of churches are trying to centralize spiritual authority. And the reason I love Oak Life is we don't try to do that. Like, I think the goal here is everyone needs to become their own spiritual leader. And the paid staff, it's their role to facilitate that as much as possible. That's why we have people other than the pastor come up, and we're trying to decentralize that power, because centralized power is the enemy of thoughtfulness. And one particularly scurrilous and scurvy technique they've used for centralizing power is this whole, if you have the wrong beliefs, you'll go to hell. I was talking to this person who was like trying to check out Oak Life. It was a gay person from a more conservative background exploring a theology that would embrace LGBT people. And he's like, oh, what are your theological positions? And I'm like, oh, we have a diversity of theological positions in Oak Life. There's actually one piece of theology on our church website that I completely disagree with. And I was like, Chris, this is terrible. And he's like, that's fine. We'll talk about it sometime. But so this person was like, lay out your positions for me. And I'm like, we try not to do that. And he's like, oh, I see, you're a new church. You're still figuring things out. You'll get the hang of it eventually. And that just made me laugh, because that's not the point. The point is that there's room for everything that people are in here, or there should be. And when there isn't, there's a problem.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add to that too, that like one of the weird claims of Christianity is the truth is a person. It's not a doctrinal statement. And often the doctrinal statements, or creeds even, are contextual and filtered through a tribal, human-centered lens. So they come out of a context. And so when it becomes about having the right belief in a particular statement, I think you're negating the complexity of Jesus, who is dynamic and incarnates and appears and is unique. It's like when you know somebody and your friend knows that person too, but they know them differently. It's not the same exact truth. It's a living, breathing thing. And I think the Western focus on like the right belief and the fear tactics of that is really centered on, underneath it, a fear of the other, fear of not having control, fear of losing power. And I think God coming and making the centralized ritual a meal that you share every day, like God is with you everywhere. Nobody can have a market on that and hold that on a box. So I yes to everything you said, and just to add a little bit.
Yeah, and I know from talking to all of you that many of you were raised with the belief that if you believed the wrong thing, you would go to hell. I was kind of raised with the belief that if I believed religion, I would become stupid. So that is the so that's the only way I can relate to that fear. And obviously, I know that fear is false at this point. But I do remember there was this one sermon you were giving on hell, Chris, and you were quoting that "sinners in the hand of the angry God" famous hellfire and brimstone sermon to sort of like argue with it and be like, no, God is loving. But you have this quote about like this sinner being held like a spider to the fire and sort of like wriggling. And it was the first time in my life I had heard that quote. And so you read it and you dramatically paused. And then I just burst out laughing, like laughing my head off. And aside from the sound of my laughing, it was total silence. It was the most awkward moment ever. I'm like, God doesn't do that. Why are you being so silly, Chris? And everyone else was like, this is scary. And I'm like, okay, just me who finds that funny then. Sorry. Mm-hmm.
It's good. Yeah, Jonathan Edwards, which is a theology we deeply, vehemently disagree with as an interpretation of God. That sermon's probably on YouTube somewhere. But there's room. Like even that, like I've had to over the years catch that fear of a different perspective. Like there's some sort of threat that sometimes we feel if like, wait, they don't believe in hell. What does that mean? Like you kind of catch yourself. And we'll share a story from the Talmud in a little bit. But I think when it comes to the God that I think we're coming to know, God is not threatened by any of our doubts, our questions, even our faith exploration of these doctrines or doubts or whatever. I think there's an openness to all that. But one of the things that happens in these conversations, we realize we disagree with people. So we're thinking about things critically, but then we have a very different opinion with somebody. And you mentioned that there's like diversity of thought even within here. Many of us have experienced that in our families. Like there's somebody in our family who believes God completely differently than us or has a different political view or whatever. One of the things that came up as we're talking through this is that tension that often comes up when we open up these big questions. How do we work through differences of opinion with others? And how do we do that maybe as a community, as some examples?
Yeah. So what you have to realize is that everyone will read the text of the Bible differently based on their life experiences. And you use your life experiences actually to form a hermeneutic. So hermeneutic, it's a word that just means reading method. Whenever you pick up anything and read it, what are you keeping in mind? Are you looking for biases? What are the guiding principles you use to make meaning out of the text? And so two people can read the exact same page and come away with very different conclusions. And what toxic religion teaches us to do is the people who reach different conclusions are a threat. They are invalidating our experiences. They're saying our experiences aren't real. And love teaches us that all our experiences can simultaneously be real, and that having different hermeneutics or methods of reading or methods of interpretation is a way to get to know each other better. And actually, when you understand another person's life experiences, there's this moment of amazing spiritual connection, which I actually find quite thrilling. The way I sort of ran into this was I read this theology book by Professor Jane Schauberg, who was a religion professor, and it was called The Illegitimacy of Jesus. And it was about exploring the theory that the Virgin Mary was not a virgin, and that the word virgin in the text had been mistranslated. A more accurate translation would be young woman. And that whole conversation she has with the angel where she's like, how can I be pregnant when I haven't been with a man? It's more like an exclamation of despair, like, how can I be pregnant? I'm not married, and less like a statement she's making about her virginity. And so this is, when this woman published this book, she received death threats. Her car was set on fire. She had an intense time. She almost got fired. She didn't get fired because of the principle of academic freedom, but it was a very close thing. She also received, in greater numbers than the death threats, these love letters from children born out of wedlock, from women who had been shamed for their sexual behavior, from many people who had been shamed or felt outcast by the church but wanted to be part of it. And those letters said, bless you for sharing this theory. Thank you so much. And so when I read this book, I just started chatting to my Oak Life friends about it. And I had a spectrum of love-hate reactions. Like, some people were so upset. They're like, you need to stop saying this. You're way off track. Like, I'm worried about you, Charlotte. Like, let's, you can't possibly be right. And let's look up Greek and Hebrew together. And I'm like, fine, I love Greek and Hebrew. Let's go for it, go. But other people were like, this is amazing. This blows it all open. This makes me feel totally different about religion. I love this. Everyone needs to know this. And, it was such an intense time in my friend group that after a while, I'm just like, I'm going to stop talking about this because it's too stressful for me right now. And, but what came out of that was this deep love of hermeneutics, because I realized that my different friends were approaching the text in different ways. And when I asked them questions, like, why is this so emotional for you? It was because of their life experiences. It was because of what the Virgin Mary was a symbol for in their own life. It was about how their community had treated them when they were believed to have behaved improperly. And it was, I think, like, is Virgin Mary rendered pure and holy and miraculous by supernatural means, or by the way that God renders all of us holy and supernatural and miraculous, which is through viewing us as pure no matter what has happened to us? And that was sort of a question that was being explored in those conversations, but not directly. And it was something the text gave us the opportunity to explore. And I ended up knowing my friends better, even if the whole experience was very alarming. And, I wish we could have more of that. Not that I like crazy drama, but maybe have those discussions without the crazy drama attached. Like, I would love it if any of you, like, even if you're a total stranger to me, like, contact me, charlotte@oaklifechurch.com, and teach me your most favorite or your least favorite passage of the Bible. Like, I want to know why it's so emotional for you. Because when I hear, the book through another person's eyes, I know God better. And it makes me happy. So yes, that's what I have to say about that.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. It puts the emphasis on the hermeneutic, on the soul underneath the data. Like, did it happen in this year or this year? And we can fight over those secondary things. But when you get to, like, why does that story mean so much to you? You get to know them. There's intimacy there. And I think that's like the purpose. That's the hope with God, is we can go to God with the questions and wrestle to get to know God more on a soul heart level. Which there's this wonderful story from the Talmud, which I'd love for you to share. The Talmud is essentially Jewish rabbinical commentaries on the law, on tradition, and various things. There's lots of volumes of them. They're wonderful books that the Western Christians would do right to learn, because we're entering a story and a conversation that started way before Christianity was formed. But yeah, the story from the Talmud about us coming to God with questions. Do you remember you telling that?
Yeah. So this group of rabbis are arguing over a point of rabbinical law. And the guy with the minority viewpoint is like, if I'm right, make the river flow in the other direction. If I'm right, make the ceiling of this hall fall down. And then that was very dangerous for everybody. And so they actually prayed to have the ceiling stop amid collapse, and that worked too. But at any rate, all these, in the Talmud story, all these divine signs kept being granted. And then the other rabbis were like, okay, but we have these very logical arguments which show that you are wrong, even if you have these divine supernatural signs seeming to endorse your point. And then at that point, God speaks up in the story, and God chuckles. And he says, my children have triumphed over me. My children have triumphed over me. Because he was joining the argument in the side of, like, the one guy, and then he realized the other guys had better arguments. And he was like, good job, kids. You out-argued me. That's clever of you. I like that. And I think those of you who have children who are old enough to argue can identify with those experiences. It's like, didn't you say, Dad, that you shouldn't eat candy before bed? Why are you eating candy? Oh, sometimes the kids win the argument, and that's part of being in relationship with an actually loving parent. And so when we have this tremendous fear, God won't love us anymore if we argue the wrong side. God likes argument. He likes to see us grow. He likes to see us step forward and become our own spiritual leaders and have the confidence to take our own spiritual positions. So that's what the Talmud story was trying to get across, I think.
It's a beautiful story, because I love the picture of God it paints, of God who welcomes discussion and invites the wrestling in joy and freedom, not in this fear of having the one right answer. Because I think that having the one right answer, is the way you described it, is one of the things that has gotten us into a place where we shut off conversation. And the reality is life is complex, spirituality is complex. There are lots of right answers, lots of different ways to look at things. And so we celebrate that here. And just like on a thought for, I know there's a lot of folks who are coming from different places of spiritual trauma, different backgrounds, where it's scary to like know that, hey, the church may not have a set position on what am I supposed to believe. I would just say, go easy on yourself and know that God welcomes your wrestling, that welcomes your doubts, your questions. And that's a good thing, because it brings about deeper intimacy and connection. So thank you, Shara, for sharing all this. We're kind of laying the ship with some maybe some takeaways. We hope that this was kind of opening up conversation and stirring some questions and thoughts for you. I'm seeing lots of comments, just the gratitude for your comments online. And we also want to say, we might do like a little podcast StreamYard thing. So if you have questions, feel free to send them in, or comments or responses. Charlotte and I might set up a time to do a little online chat and keep this conversation going. But some takeaways, some things to continue this conversation with. Anything you want to name off the bat? I have a slide too, trying to capture basically this, but yeah.
Yeah, a takeaway came to me while we were analyzing the Bible passage at the beginning. And I feel smug that I was right, that I told you people would be upset by that passage to a degree. Because on the surface, it does seem to be that thing my dad hated of don't think about, medical science, just believe. But the way I interpret that passage, and this can be a takeaway, is what does it mean to believe in God? So one aspect of God is the love of other human beings. The love of other humans is part of God. And so in these terrible times when, it feels like people are short-tempered and behaving very destructively towards each other, and I'm really upset about the anti-maskers and the anti-vaxxers in Ottawa. So I ask myself, what does it mean to believe in the love of other humans now? What does it mean to say, have mercy on my unbelief in the love of other humans? Because that can be hard to believe in when people are being jerks. So I think that if the anti-vaxxers believed that the people sharing science loved them, they would be a lot more open to it. And if we believed that these destructive people were trying to fight for some value of love they had, I think we would be able to talk to them in a way that would reach them. And that seems so hard, it's almost impossible. So that's what, for me, help my unbelief means, is to get through these crises, these dangers, these disasters together. We need to have a belief in the lovingness of other human beings that seems almost impossible to reach. So I hope that that can be something you reach for, and that can be a takeaway.
Beautiful. I'll say two last things and pray, and we'll do a song. But there's a list of some things we kind of referenced, some takeaways. One book, if you'd like to explore, this came out recently. I found it really helpful to this conversation, by Brian McLaren, called Faith After Doubt. He puts this framework of the progress of faith that's actually cyclical, but often we start in simplicity, we move to complexity, we go to perplexity, and eventually the goal is harmony, and that cycles for our whole life as we grow in our faith and it expands. But I will say, personally, some of what you're saying is believing in that love. I would say also knowing that love, like having it. There's almost nothing anybody could say about like the Bible. Like, did you know this whole chapter was added later? I would still like be like, yeah, but I talk to God and have this connection to God and love, and like I experience God. And so all the stories about God, let's explore the virgin story, let's explore creationism, let's explore those things, are just ways to process intellectually and to come at different ways to know each other, to know God more. But I would hope for us that we can be at a point where we know God as love and we experience that, and that experience then plays out through our intellect. So let's give it up for Charlotte, guys. Thank you so much for... Charlotte's going to lead us in communion after a song. Would you join me in a prayer as we welcome the musicians back up to give us a chance to process and go to God in music? So thank you for this conversation, for it being fun. Thank you for the space and freedom to ask the big questions. I pray that anyone in here who is sensing fear or hesitation, that you'd meet them in that, Lord, that eventually you'd melt our rigid views of you down so that they are warm and loving just like you are. Your love, Scripture tells us, holds all, bears all. It's big enough for it all. So wherever we're at, Lord, I pray that we would find you with us. I pray this all in Christ's name. Amen.
I just want to say thank you again, Charlotte. You're a boss. I love you. You're dope. And trusting in God doesn't have to be scary. It can be fun too, right? Amen?
Amen.
Amen. If perfect love casts out fear, then why should I ever be afraid? When I know that you will always be right next to me. But still my vision's kind of blurry, and I can always see your hand. But even in the darkest night, you will always be there. Oh, when I trust in you, I do the thing that I was made to do, to live a life that fully rests in you, and all your promises for me. And when I trust in you, when I trust in you, when I trust in you, when I trust in you. Jesus, we know you're the good shepherd, and never ever lost a sheep. So we lay down all our worries, lay them down at your feet, yeah. Oh, and we trust in you. We do the thing that we were made to do, to live a life that fully rests in you, and all your promises for us. Oh, we trust. Let's sing that again. We trust in you. We do the thing that we were made to do, yeah, to live a life that fully rests in you, and all your promises for us. Oh, when we trust in you, when we trust in you, when we trust in you, when we trust in you. when we trust in you. When we trust in you. Oh, when we trust in you. And all God's people said, amen.
Amen.
Oh my God.
Hi, everyone. I'm doing a communion reflection about Valentine's Day, actually, because it's tomorrow. And like many American holidays, it seems designed to remind you of the love you're missing. I've taken photos of all the Valentine's Day balloons at Safeway and Instagrammed them. Thanks for the trigger warning, Safeway. This is exactly what I wanted to see, you know? And so I want to remember especially people who are feeling unhappy in their romantic relationships or who don't have them, like me. But this year, actually, I'm proud of myself because I kind of expect my self-pity to be at a record low tomorrow. And this communion ritual with the bread and wine, which at this point, they're props. You'll actually pick up your things you eat out of the basket when you go out today. Or if you're at home, you'll go get your own elements. But this bread and this wine, or that bread and that wine over there, when I munch on it, I try and focus on what I have. And the meaning of communion feast is that I have all of you. And more than you, I have people hundreds of years ago and hundreds of years from now are part of my family. I am profoundly not alone, even when I feel alone. And my found family has changed a lot during these COVID times. I don't know if y'all relate to that. If you rely on your friends as found family and your friendship groups have changed a lot these past 2 years, I feel ya, same boat. But even when the membership of the found family goes through dramatic changes, even when you're, you lose your romantic partners or your family members, the found family, the loving family that spans all place, all time, all history, all geography, that family is still there, and that's what the bread and the wine means. And so the bread broken for you means that your body is as sacred and precious and beautiful as God's body. So no feeling ugly or undesirable tomorrow, huh? That's what I wanted to remind you of. Thank you. And now all we've got left is benediction, I believe. And then we'll be heading out. Say it with me. God of love, may we be people who are planted in the soil of your presence and growing in the ways of your goodness. May our roots grow deep and our branches reach out as we walk the path of love together. Be with us now as we go forth to love and serve the world in person or from a distance. Amen.